Could I have your attention, please? And I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome to the May 19th, 2008, Monday evening, Lowell Planning Board agenda. Tonight we have no public hearings. We do have a pre-application matter on, and we have a couple matters under old business. At this point in time, we do not have any minutes to consider at this point in time, so I'll skip those, and we will go right over to the pre-application session. The following individual has requested for the planning board to provide a preliminary review of their proposed project at the address listed below. These are not public hearings. Each project will require a public hearing as noted below. The planning board renders no decision or guarantees any future decision, whether positive or negative, or any project that receives a pre-application review. The review process is for informational purposes only. The project this evening address is 104 Meadow Road. The applicant is Loon Hill Development. The project is a residential subdivision, which is 5 parcels. The zoning is a traditional single-family zone, and the required relief is for a definitive subdivision. Also tonight on the agenda, we do have one matter before us, which is a recommendation to give to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is coming in for May 28th. And that matter is the exact same project we have in front of us, and they're looking for to construct a single-family dwelling exceeding the maximum allowed front yard setback. So since we're doing the pre-application stage, I'd like to take that matter up at the same point in time, and we can address both issues while the applicant presents their case to the board, if the board have no objection on taking those two together. No objection from board members? Okay. So hearing that, the project is 104 West Meadow Road, and this is, like I say, a pre-application session, which will require a public hearing at a future date. And just for the record, that future date has already been scheduled for June 5th, and it has been advertised in tonight's local paper. Saying all that, may we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, board members, my name is George Salides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell, and I'm here this evening in behalf of Loon Hill Development, the two principals of whom are also with me over there, Dan Chasey and Timothy Juzak. I just want to quickly say these are a couple of guys who've done a number of top-notch projects in the area, including the condos out on Hildreth Street right next to, the good ones, right next to the Hannaford Market, the condos right behind Cavaliero's Restaurant, and a whole bunch of very nice single-family houses. So I think we're dealing with some top-notch builder developers here, and the best part of it is we also have a great project which is I think I can call it a win-win. This is like a 7+ acre parcel of land owned by the city of Lowell on West Meadow Road. It's at the very end of it. They call it an extension, Rita Street extension. And it's a parcel of land that the city put out to bid for RFP. My clients were this successful bidder. I hesitated there for a minute because they actually bid probably 40% higher than the other person, so sometimes they're not sure how successful they were by paying that extra money. But in any event, what they propose to do with the 7 acres is to build 5 brand new single-family houses. That's the maximum, and basically that's going to be on less than 3 acres of land. And not only is it going to bring to the city, we estimate somewhere near in the neighborhood of $1,750,000 in new assessments, the rest of the land will be maintained as conservation land by the city, retained, I should say, as conservation land for the city, for the other 4+ acres. In addition to everything else, and I have Mr. Brett, I forgot to mention Jeff is with me here tonight, the engineer. Jeff's going to give you more of the particulars, but in addition to the 5 new houses, by the way, it's a TSF lot, the TSF district, which requires 7,000 square foot lots All 5 of the lots are 12,000 square feet or greater. The biggest one is, I think, around 26,000 square feet. So we're not cheating or squeezing or doing anything. We've got 5 good lots that are going to have 5 nice houses in it. And I just wanted to mention, and Jeff will get into more of the specifics, we're going to talk about, we're putting in a new sewer line, a new water line, hydrants, all as part of the project. So without any further ado from me, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to give you a few more of the details, and I thank you for the opportunity.
My name is Jeffrey Brem. I'm with the engineering firm of Myers Brem Corporation. And before I start, let me tell you, I didn't get in a fight in Boston Garden last night. I had some surgery on my nose, but I'll be doing better tomorrow when it comes off.
I think we'd be more impressed if you got in a fight at Boston Garden
I
last
know
night.
that, but
would
we
be good.
won, so there was no reason to fight. George outlined the project. I'm going to try to get into particulars with you. The 7-acre piece, let me orient you on the map here. North is facing this way. The project is off of Rita Street, which is right here. Columbia Road is here, which joins up with Mammoth Road, so in the Pawtuckettville section. This land here eventually goes out to West Meadow, and that's why it's called 104 West Meadow Road. It's also adjacent to Lowell General Hospital, to the west. Let me tell you a little bit about the conditions of the site as it exists. It generally slopes in this direction. There's a stream, a perennial stream, that flows in this way and eventually to a large wetland area off-site. The topo is gentle through here. Rita Street currently is fairly steep. It drops off originally at like a 9% grade, then flattens out to a 5 or 6% grade. Our site is less than that. There are wetlands, like I said, to the west here with the stream. And there's another pocket of wetlands adjacent to Lowell General Hospital land that kind of meanders into the site. The soils are generally mixed, kind of till material. We've done testing here for the stormwater system. And the vegetation is a mixed hardwood and softwoods. As you get into the wetlands, there's wetland vegetation as well. What we're proposing to do, Rita Street currently comes down here. It's a narrow street and it ends as a dead end. No turnaround, no T-type turnaround, nothing. There are 3 house lots on it, and there's some driveways associated with that. What we're proposing to do is extend it from this point 154 feet and create a turnaround, as you see here, with 5 new lots. And by doing that, we could provide the minimum frontage for the TSF zone, which is 55 feet. All lots have that. And as George mentioned, the zoning district requires 7,000 square feet, and all of our lots are significantly above that. 12,000 all the way up to 28,000. The road grade I mentioned, there's a profile shown. It's 9% at the beginning, then it levels off to 6%. That's existing Rita Street. As it approaches where we're extending it, you see, I don't know if you've got these plans, but it's a 5.6% grade, and then our extension is essentially a 2% grade. So it's fairly flat all the way to the back end of the cul-de-sac. And with that, we're proposing 2 new catch basins, one here and one here. That new system will be discharged here to a new stormwater management facility, which complies with the standards of the state, the new DEP standards. So we have a 4-bay here, which just lets the flow settle, creates some settlement potential, and then it overflows into a stormwater management facility, which treats the runoff, essentially polishes it before it goes back to the wetland. None of the drainage areas are being diverted, so all the flow that got here before continues to get there. And these facilities will also be designed so that there'll be no increase in the rate of runoff. Sewer, George mentioned, as I said, it currently goes downhill, so what we're proposing is to provide 5 new E1 pipes, E1 pumps. These are low velocity, low pressure pumps. They're put outside, they're essentially an appliance. They're put outside the unit into they come all in one. You just drop them in, The pump's there. All you have to do is electrify it and sewer to it and discharge up to a very small, on purpose, a very small PVC line which takes it up the Rita Street to Columbia. Currently, that's the existing manhole, and it goes in that direction. The water service provided to these 3 residents right now is essentially an undersized, probably a 2-inch pipe, and we're going to abandon that pipe and replace it with a new 6-inch water line. It's going to come down Rita Street and dead end at a fire hydrant, and we're going to provide services to all 5 new lots as well as the 3 existing lots. Back up a little bit, the 3 lots will also have capability. There'll be T's put in so that if they want to tie into the sewer line, they will be able to do so as well. The sidewalk we're proposing, and right from the beginning, it's a sidewalk to nowhere, but it's required. So we have a sidewalk from here to here on one side of the road. And you had mentioned in your opening statement, Mr. Chairman, about we're going to the Board of Appeals for a variance. Let me describe that a little bit. On one of the lots, Lot 4, due to the, not just primarily, due essentially to the wetland that goes onto the lot and the 50-foot setback that's required and other things that are required, the house cannot be in this location. And we were unable to reorient anything else as well. So in order to make it work, all we've done is just move the house back a little bit. However, your zoning has a minimum setback and a maximum setback. So we obviously comply with the minimum setback. What we're asking for a variance is the maximum setback. And it's due quite clearly to the wetlands. If the wetland was not there, the building could easily fit right there, which is one of the allowable reasons for the Board of Appeals to grant a variance, topography and shape. So that's what we're going to the Board of Appeals for. It doesn't really impair the design of the site at all. You see these are all at the frontage. It's at the end of the street. Part of the reason why you have that minimum and maximum is so you don't have, undulating lots, undulating houses, some back way in the far and some out front. Being at the end of the cul-de-sac, that doesn't really come to play. So we're hoping that the Board of Appeals will grant us that. That's it in a nutshell. This is a preliminary plan. The final plan will be reviewed by your engineering department. I'm sure they'll have comments when we get to that level at the next hearing. I've had some, while I've been out there. Not necessarily pleasant ones, but yeah.
A couple, well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I haven't had any official conversations.
At some point.
Yeah.
My clients have. And there's a couple of things that I think are very favorable here, Mr. Locke, that they're going to do. One of these parcels, one of the abutters has a shed that actually encroaches on this property at this point now, and we've carved out a piece of the land for that shed to be able to stay there. There's another spot, Dan, what did I forget? They changed the lot line when they were figuring out what actually they were going to buy for the city, from the city, to accommodate the woman on the left-hand side over there who didn't want any of the houses to be too close to her. So we reconfigured and moved everything away from them. So, and they're all going to be in a position that will be supplying, they're going to have in front of them the new sewerage and the new water that they can tap into. They have no sewerage now, their septic systems. So Dan has already had a number of conversations with the folks, Mr. Lockhart. So, and I think certainly our impression is that the current homeowners in the area are not against our project. I'm sure people would love to have nobody around them, but in general, I think we're trying to make this as an accommodating a project as possible.
I should add also that we're going in front of the Conservation Commission starting Wednesday night for work within the buffer. We have no filling of any wetland resource areas, no filling of the riverfront area, but when you work within 100 feet, we have to go before them to get permission, so that's what we're going for beginning Wednesday.
Mr. Chairman? Can I ask?
Yes, Mr. Gentleman.
So you mentioned that the conversations with the neighbors were not positive.
Well, one time when I was walking out here, some neighbor from in this direction on John d'Arc Street came over and asked me what I was doing. You know, he thought I was on his property, so, you know, typical. We get that all the time. Obviously, I wasn't on his property, and we straightened it out.
Right. But no, other than, you know, the issues that seem to have been addressed, no obvious objections.
I think it only relates, as I said, Mr. Gendron, to the fact that people would rather have nothing back there if possible.
Okay, I was curious about the conservation land that the city was going to take back. Can you talk about that a little
Actually, the city owns the whole thing right
Yeah.
now, and my clients and George's clients are in the process of buying it. And essentially, they'd be buying a little over 2.5 acres of the 7-acre parcel.
Mm-hmm.
The remainder of it, as I understand, would stay within the city and become.
It'll never
conservation.
change hands, in other words. We're only going to end up buying the smaller piece.
bit? So is that has nothing to do with your transaction, though, the fact that the city's going to maintain that as conservation land?
Correct.
No.
Okay. I would imagine the assurance that that was going to be maintained as conservation land would be viewed as positive to the neighborhood.
I would hope
well.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're going to put a sidewalk on one side. Is there an existing sidewalk on both sides of the street now? or-
Rita Street has no sidewalk whatsoever.
No sidewalk at all?
Correct.
Are you bringing the sidewalk all the way up? Or
No,
just,
there's restrictions all the way up as well. It's a 40-foot right-of-way with about 20 to 22 feet of pavement.
Mhm.
And I would say that between the pavement, the fact that it's a narrow right-of-way to begin with, and the people there that have kind of used some of the
Claimed
land, built walls in the way, you know, it's steep, so there's walls in the way. There's
Mhm.
a retaining wall right here, for example, in
I
this
see.
whole section. There's really not any room to build a sidewalk.
Okay.
Without reconstructing the whole street.
So will your sidewalk come around the cul-de-sac, or where will it go?
We propose, your rules say a sidewalk on one side of the street at the pleasure of the board, so that's what we're proposing, where this portion of the street is street, and then this is a turnaround,
Mhm.
and we didn't see it needing to turn around to itself, so I just ended it here. There's been debate among us of whether we should ask for a waiver of that, and I think we'd like to ask for a waiver from the board, since it's a street beginning nowhere and going nowhere. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, so,
You'd have to ask for a waiver for, not on both sides to begin with anyway.
correct.
So even if you come in with the one, you still seek a request of a waiver.
So I guess what I'm getting at is we're showing on the plan as one side, but would like to ask for a waiver at the time when we come in for a definitive plan and not have a sidewalk. Mainly because it begins nowhere and ends nowhere.
I always am partial to a sidewalk, you know, with a new development, especially if it's going to be at the bottom of that. I think it would dress it up nicely and maybe help with drainage. I don't know, but I would always advocate for a sidewalk all the way around. But you know, we can discuss that at the other meeting. And the maximum setback, I think that's obviously better than violating the minimum setback. I'd rather see you further away than closer. And that lot looks like it's going to be 23,000 square feet, so it's a good-sized lot anyway. So, and I think that makes sense.
While you're on that subject, sir, we also abut, this is Lowell General Hospital land, and this is a large wetland that's between us and the hospital. I don't ever expect anything to be built right there.
Right.
Even though it's not city land and it's not, quote, conservation land, it's virtually impossible to get to this island.
Yeah, I mean, again, when we get to the actual hearing, we'll get, you know, if there's any concerns from the neighbors, we have to take those into consideration. But in my opinion, looking at this, it looks like a pretty nice development that will, you know, good-sized lots. Do we know how big the houses are going to be, roughly, square footage?
Yeah, they're going to be very close to what they're shown here. They're 28 by 38s.
But
and-
I mean, the actual square footage of the...
What's that in total? 1,950 square
So-
feet,
so-
plus a two-car garage.
So reasonable size houses on with a two-car garage on a good lot of land. It looks like a pretty good project, and I think it would be very desirable too, because you've got conservation land on both sides of your property. So I think it could be a nice, desirable subdivision for the city. So from this perspective, I think it looks pretty good.
Great, thank you.
What kind of curbing are you putting in?
Whatever that requires, you got me a little bit off guard, but I think, do you require granite curbing? Yeah, then that's what we're putting.
That would look the best, too.
That's what the city engineer will recommend, yep.
Yep.
Mr. Clinton, excuse me.
Thank you,
questions?
Mr. Chairman. I think just the fact that you're proposing that turnaround is good for that area, because as it is now, the roadway as built out is very narrow. I don't think a fire apparatus could go down and turn around. There's no turnaround or T where anybody could spin a car or a vehicle around. So I think that's good, and bringing sewer down the street will be helpful to the neighbors if they ultimately want to tie into it. The street itself is built out to about 22 feet, and the new development, what's that going to be built out to?
28 feet.
Okay, so there'll be 28 feet of pavement, and whether you add sidewalks to the,
On top of that,
Right.
correct.
on top of that, that's fine. It's very wooded there now. What's the intention in terms of the clearing of the lot?
What you see here is what's cleared. So around the wetlands, obviously we're going to leave that. Along the river, it does look like we're getting close, but we've actually maintained the 25-foot zone along the bank of the river. And then the same thing up here. The 25-foot line is here, so we're well over 25 feet from the bank of the river. So it will still, once you're in the subdivision, you'll see the lawn areas, but everything behind it will still be wooded, very wooded.
Right. Because I noticed the address is West Meadow Road, but there's no access to West Meadow Road. It's really just
Well, I
off
think
of
there
River
is
Street.
actually, it's way over here, though.
Right.
It's on the other 4 acres.
That'll be over, though, the remaining land of the city that's staying
Correct.
as
So
conservation
that's
land.
the actual address of the property,
Right.
but eventually it'll be Rita Street Extension.
Right.
And that's what we call it, Rita Street Extension, and that's what the subdivision name will be.
The conservation land that's going to remain with the city, will that be usable land, or is that all wetlands?
Part of it is wet, part of it is not wet.
All right,
Yep. It's wooded, like you mentioned.
all right. All right, I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
I just have a couple. The wetlands to the top of your screen, the brown, right there, who owns that?
This portion is owned by the Lowell General Hospital.
Yep, right.
And then it goes on to this property.
So
So
Lowell-
Lot 3 would own, Lot 5 would own a portion of it, and Lot 4 would own a portion of it.
Okay.
It's
So they're
part of
taking-
the large
okay.
lot areas.
'Cause I knew you were talking about the wetlands, I just wanted, and I know Lowell General's up here to the right, but I wasn't sure if the city of Lowell owned part of that wetlands or Lowell General. Okay.
No, Lowell General.
So you're purchasing that from Lowell General?
No, this is the line, the limit of the city-owned land right here. So
Okay.
what you see in color is the part that we're purchasing.
Right. Okay,
That portion of the wetland is in Lowell General Hospital, then the wetland does cross onto this property.
okay. So the brown section, is that city-owned?
The brown section is city-owned,
Okay.
yes.
Right. So you have the wetlands from the city up there as well as down below? Okay.
Correct.
I wasn't sure if that was part of Lowell General and they deeded it off to you
No,
as
sorry,
well. Okay.
that is city-owned, yep.
Okay. I did notice when I was up there the other day, and I had the question, but you addressed part of it to me, was the shed. I noticed the shed is not on the person's property down there.
Correct.
And by looking at the drawings, I noticed you have a little parcel X, and it looks like some trees around there?
Yep, 4 trees, arborvitaes, to screen the shed from the future Lot 5.
I noticed that, and then next to that shed, there's like a car canopy where they park the car, I imagine, and then the house. Now, where the shed is, are you gonna give them an easement, or after you get this approved,
I
sell
believe
off a
that
piece of
part-
property to them, or?
I think parcel X is to be transferred to that property
Okay.
owner.
So you're gonna transfer them a deed of,
Yep,
In fee,
in fee.
the whole thing.
okay.
Ownership, yeah.
So that little triangle there by where those trees are, you'd cut off a piece of property right there?
Correct.
Okay. 'Cause I did notice that was,
It's on the definitive plan, as
okay.
well.
Yeah, I was just curious what was gonna happen with that shed. I figured when I saw it on your lot, I figured
Yeah.
it must be.
I think
And
everybody
when I saw
thought,
the little parcel X, I figured something was happening with it.
yeah, that came out on the survey. I don't think the guy knew it. and-
Yeah, especially where he has all wooded area down there, so you put a little shed there, and
Right.
that happens quite a bit, unfortunately. Your neighbors put up a shed, they're not gonna go get a survey,
Right.
especially when there's no neighbor next to them to say, you're encroaching. It's
Exactly.
just all wide open
Happens
tree
all
line.
the time.
Okay. You do have to go before conservation, only one question. On the variance you're requesting, it looks like, what are you, 86.5 feet back, and the maximum is 20?
Correct.
Okay.
Sounds right.
And obviously, that's due because of the wetlands,
The
right?
wetland that comes in, correct.
And just, to adjust that issue just a little bit, a lot of times, what happens is, if, we have the ZBA notice before us tonight for recommendation, but then we also have this coming back before us for the site plan for public hearing. So sometimes, we'll either make a recommendation, or sometimes we'll hold off until we see the whole public hearing process.
We're hoping that you give us a recommendation so that we could, I think they're scheduled for the 28th.
Right, I saw that.
So,
Right.
which will, I think is happening before your hearing. So we're hoping that you can give us a
And
recommendation.
sometimes, by watching the ZBA meetings, sometimes they're more comfortable, and they send it back to us to make our vote on the site plan before they'll vote on the variance. And that's just from when I watch the TV at night, they'll say, when are you going back before the planning board? Well,
Right.
we have a site plan then, and a lot of times I'll see the motions be made, well, why don't we wait to see what the planning board does with the whole project before we give the variance? So I'm just
Hopefully it won't be
cautioning you
that
on
way.
that one way or another. And sometimes we like to see the whole plan before we go on board recommending the variance, and then come back and do the site plan, because sometimes things might change when we do get comments back from department heads. So that's why I said they're both on the agenda tonight, we'll take them together. But sometimes ZBA would want to see if we're going to approve the project before they bring it back. And I've seen things that have come here, most recently a plan that we had here 4 times was back before ZBA, back before us, until it finally got approval. More of it was just the timing of back and forth.
Well, hopefully that won't occur here. It's actually, from a grading point, from a in-the-field point, it's very easy. There's no real issues. We meet all your other criteria as far as your 50-foot to the wetlands for the building, the work, the roadway, the driveway, everything else fits. So it actually fits really well, and it's shown up on the plan that way. Hopefully you could give at least a positive recommendation, then we don't have to keep doing that back and forth.
Let me just think if I have no further questions. Any other board members have any further questions? Mr.
I was
Chairman?
just curious, what is that, John Dock Street?
Yep.
Is that just going to be a dead end there?
That is currently a dead end,
It'll
correct?
just stay that way? Is that wooded there?
That's
Yeah.
correct, yeah.
That's all. Mr.
Columbia
Chairman?
dead ends there too, at the end, right?
That one just dead ends, just same way, it just
Columbia does
stops.
go in the other way, yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Actually, I think, who was it, some of the, when I go up and look at it, I also came down Jean Dock Street, and I noticed there how they had the wetlands there, and I think it was Mr. D'Ambrosi's property, which was very well, nicely kept, and I think the gentleman was out there working the avenue, I was there. That's a nice, wide open area too, but like you said, that comes down where all that wetlands is. And coming in, as you indicated earlier, there is quite a bit of wetlands when you're driving into your left, which you can see the water pretty high,
Right.
which obviously is, I mean, you can see it high from just
Yeah,
driving the
from
street.
right here, yeah.
Right there, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
right there.
when I saw it at first, I said,
Big,
I know I'm getting near
wide
wetlands, because you can pretty much see how wide open it was. So that's a big area of wetlands right there.
Mr. Chairman, I think, given the fact that we're violating in that lot the maximum setback, that, I think, can become a problem when you have a situation where there's a house that meets the minimum frontage, and they tuck the house in behind a house next door, You see that a couple places around the city where you're violating the maximum setback because they had to tuck the house in there behind another lot in order to meet all the other requirements. And that, I think, is a clear violation of what we want. In this case, that's not the case, right? In this case, it's just to avoid the wetland. So, I would feel comfortable making a motion that we recommend approval on the variance to the zoning board so that they can meet their time schedule, notwithstanding the site plan approval. That doesn't mean, that something won't come out of the site plan approval that I'd be concerned about. But, based on what you've shown us and the fact that you're only violating the maximum setback and it's not tucked away behind another lot, I'd make the motion that we recommend approval to the zoning board.
Okay, we do have recommendation made for approval for the recommendation only to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which will take place at a public hearing on May 28th, 2008 at 6:30 PM in this City Council chambers.
To follow up on that point, I would agree with Mr. Gendron, in particular in this case, as far as the variance is concerned, it does relate to the shape and topography of that land, so I think you do have the legal basis for the variance there, so I would concur and I would support that recommendation for approval.
I would as well. It makes the whole development work.
Motion's made and seconded.
Makes sense.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes yes, so the planning board has recommended 4 in favor and 0 against, and 1 absent this evening for the variance for the maximum allowed front yard setback. Saying that, now, basically for the preliminary hearing that we have tonight, for anybody who's watching at home, this is only informational purposes, so we have not made a decision on the site plan approval. That is scheduled for a public hearing on Thursday, June 5th, 6:30, on a Thursday night here in this city council chambers. It has been advertised, as I said earlier. I was in the Lowell Sun tonight, and it should be again next week. So if anybody has any concerns, they can come to the Division of Planning and Development and look at the plans as well. And any questions or concerns, everything they have to say, they can be present that night, and we'll try to address any questions they have. Saying that, any of the board members have any further questions on the preliminary plan?
If I could just point out,
Sure.
Chairman Lenahan, that it's actually going to be a definitive subdivision.
So definitive, I'm sorry.
Not
So
a
it's a
site
definitive,
plan
okay,
review,
my apologies.
for the
So
fifth,
it's a
just to
definitive subdivision
clarify.
instead of a site plan. I gotcha. My apologies for that. Anything else, Alan, that you'd like to add besides that?
No, not as of yet.
Okay.
We're right now looking at the plans throughout the different departments in the city. There'll be a chance for us to get together and put together comments and hopefully have them to the board in a week, as well as the applicant, so they have an opportunity to make any adjustments that are necessary.
So you make recommendations and feedback will be given to the applicant before that night on the plans that they've been
Yeah,
submitted?
we try to get it a week before the meeting.
Okay. So obviously, you know how to receive the communications for Division of Plan and Development.
Not a problem.
And address, and if you come in that night, if you have a list of things that they have some comments on, if you want to address those in the presentation, it's easier for us to follow along instead of asking those questions.
I will do that.
Thank you, and good luck with your definitive subdivision plan.
Two-
We see you.
Two quick comments,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
First of all, I thank the board and Mr. Gendron for the vote on the zoning board. That's very helpful and thoughtful and will help us along the way. Secondly, I thank everybody for not picking on poor Mr. Brem, who caught a hockey puck in his nose, but no, it wasn't really. But we've been razzing him all the way in today, and I'm sure the TV audience will probably be wondering what's going on. Again, I thank you all very much.
Good night.
Moving along on the agenda, the next matter we have is under old business, and this is on 19 Jackson Street. The board will review a request by Jackson Street Associates, LLC, and College Street Management to accept a minor change to the special permit granted for the residential development located at the above address, which is currently known as Loft Number 27. The project was originally proposed as a 176 residential unit conversion of an existing mill building with the special permit issued by the Lowell Planning Board, referencing 172 units. The project was constructed and occupancy permits have been issued for 173 units. The board will review and decide if the alterations warrant a minor change and amendment to the existing special permit, or if the additional unit constitutes a substantial change and should proceed through a full hearing process. May we hear the case for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, James Flood, 81 Bridge Street, Lowell, representing Jackson Street Associates LLC and College Street Management. I think the notice or the paragraph that Aaron wrote speaks for itself. I've passed out to the board copies of the occupancy permits issued by the city and also the as-built plans. I think what happened, and I wasn't involved initially, and I don't know if you people have any recollection, but the application was for 176, and the approval came through at 172. I've looked at the plans that were submitted, and they weren't definite plans. They were called a typical plan, and it showed 172 units. So I think what happened when they were constructing it, they might have made a two-bedroom unit into a one-bedroom unit. All of the units are within an existing building. It doesn't affect the outside. So I really think it's a minor change. And because they're going to a condominium, and those are the as-built plans, they wanted to clarify that decision and hopefully get an amendment from this board. But like I said, there's plenty of parking, and I think Aaron will back that up. Everything is inside the building, so there's no outside changes whatsoever. I don't know what happened in 2005 when they were in front of you, but maybe they didn't have their final plans at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Yeah, so basically what we're doing, you're trying to request a minor change from one unit, from 172 to 173.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, I do remember when this came in at the time. It's indicated by notes that were given to us from the Division of Planning and Development. The motion was approved, 5 in favor, 0, none against. I know by looking at the matter, you're talking that the outside's the same, the parking's the same, everything is the same, so it's whether it's a minor change or not. I mean, you're looking at, for the amount of units you have, it's like, if you reference the numbers, it's less than 2% change.
I tried to compare, I had the plan that I got from Aaron, and it was really just a plan, a typical plan of a floor plan in the second floor. So I don't know where the change was, Mr. Chairman, but I can only anticipate it was a two-bedroom turned into two one-bedrooms because of something within inside the building. But like I said, everything is inside.
And as was stated, I think it was advertised originally for 176 units, and some reiteration, it came down to 172.
And I believe they even have the parking for the 173, if I remember correctly.
They have
plenty of
more, they have
parking.
more than
Right.
sufficient parking
I
there.
remember they had plenty at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have at least from across the street, from Jackson Street there, right. Right, yeah. Any of the board members have any further questions?
I'm just curious, so the parking on this is relief based on the fact that it's a renovation of a historical building or something, is that
Right,
right?
so the old Joan Fabrics building.
Right, but normally it's 2 spaces per unit. Aaron, I guess I'm asking you, is this, not that it matters for your question, I'm just curious. Is there, the parking restrictions lower for this development because it's a historical renovation?
Well, it is lower, but the reason that the parking requirements are lower is that the project is within 1,500 linear feet of a municipal parking building.
Okay.
So in residential projects, within that distance, you can cut, I think you can cut it in half.
Right.
So it would be
I see.
one unit, or excuse me, one parking space per unit.
But I think there's plenty of parking on site, too.
Yeah,
the
they
garage too.
provided
That
something,
makes sense.
I think around just over 200 parking spaces, if not more than that.
You know-
So there was plenty of parking.
You know, I think I would be remiss, since Mr. Frechette isn't here, if I didn't point out that it doesn't look like the parking lot meets our landscaping standards. But again, that's not before us tonight. This is, I guess, whether or not this is a substantial change, and I think moving it from 172 to 173 could hardly be construed as a substantial change, so,
Minor, yeah, I would say so.
even by me.
Any of the board, I have really no problem with it. I think it's a minor change. I remember the whole thing when it came in that time. We spent a lot of time on it that night. We had a lot of feedback on it, and it indicated it was advertised at 176. I think somewhere on the plans it went from 172 to 173. It has plenty of parking. Has parking on site, has parking across the street. As indicated now, it's going to be right there on Jackson Street while the development's going on in the city. So obviously, to get it corrected now, and indicate now you get even new parking garage down there.
Well, the less parking might be better for the city because of the garage across the street.
Right, so I mean,
But there's
and I think
sufficient
basically,
area.
it must have been a oversight at one point in time, and I don't think this, in my opinion, it's a minor change. And I have no problem with going along with the amendment to the existing special permit. I don't know, the board members have any problems with that? Okay,
I agree. Mr. Chairman, I'll make that as a motion to amend the special permit to reflect the minor change from 172 to 173 units.
I'll second the motion.
motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes yes, so we have 4 in favor, 0 against, and 1 absent.
Thank you.
Moving along on the agenda, the next matter we have is 86.1 Bernier Street, which is a special permit extension. The board will review a request by Woman in Transition for a 6-month extension for the special permit previously approved by the planning board during the meeting held on March 20th, 2006. The project includes the extension of Bernier Street in order to provide adequate frontage for 3 residential buildings, each containing 2 units, for a total of 6 units. The project required site plan approval. definitive subdivision approval and a special permit issued by the planning board. So you're looking for an extension, Mr. Flood?
Yes, and I sent a letter, I think that outlines the reason. I think at all times they were acting under the special permit, but the attorney that's handling the financing wants to make sure that the planning board consents to it and agrees as an extension. What happened was, this is registered land, and it's a little different when you're dealing with registered land because you can't automatically go into you have to go to the land court to get your subdivision approved. In addition, this was along Route 495, and we had to get a consent of Mass Highway to our filing, which took a little more time. So we're ready now. I met with the building commissioner, and I gave you a copy of his response to me, where he feels we've been working under it, and he has no problem with it. So I would like to get your consent to that extension also, so we can go forward with the construction. I think you all remember what this is. This is a piece that we purchased from the city of Lowell. It's for battered women, and it's going to be a very good project for the city, so.
And just for the record, we do have a letter that was addressed to Attorney Flood. I believe Attorney Flood sent a letter to Inspector of Building Commissioner, Mr. Camacho, which we have in our packet. And now Mr. Flood has returned a letter from him to Attorney Flood. It states, in his opinion, a 6 months extension would be granted based on the information supplied to him and contained herein. So the building inspector has no problem with extending it for 6 months. So basically, the reason for the extension is because of land court holding you up.
Right,
And the Mass Highway to get
that
approval.
took a lot of additional time. I think you can appreciate that, and I think Joe
understand
can
that.
appreciate that, because he's dealt with it too. But when you deal with the land court, they're more particular, they ask for more things, and it takes a little more time to,
And I think by reading your letter, you indicated that you were doing it by way of, you weren't sure if you'd need it, but you'd rather be safe than sorry by
yes,
proceeding with it.
yeah, I want to make sure.
Because one of the
because-
changes was what had to be done. I mean, you indicated that you
Well,
thought.
I think that,
Just-
my opinion is we were acting under the permit anyways,
Right.
within the 2-year period, but I want to be safe, and just so we can do the financing and get this built, and it's for a very good cause.
Any board members have any question on granting the 6 months extension for the special permit?
No questions.
No questions, no? Entertain a motion then?
I'll make that motion to approve extension for 6 months on the special permit.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. So 4 in favor, 0 against, and 1 absent.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome, Mr. Flood. Have a good night. Okay. Moving along on the agenda, excuse me. We have notices from a budding town. I believe we had a couple of copies in our handout. If there's no objection, I'll entertain a motion to place those on file.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to place notices from abutting towns on file.
Motion's made and...
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ZBA notices, we did have the one, we addressed that issue already. Then we do have general correspondences, anything, or any further comments from the board members? The only question I have is, and I indicated that information you sent us, and I saw in the advertisement tonight, there's gonna be are we coming in on the next meeting for a zone change on Bridge Street? Was that 1141 or 1114? I read it
That's correct. It's 1141 Bridge Street. It's actually a parcel that's just south of the Market Basket.
Oh, that's
It's,
that old gift shop, it's gonna get torn down, right?
Yeah, correct. Basically, what they want to do is extend the back of the zoning district. It's a traditional mixed use. They want to extend it further back into the parcel, so I believe, so they can add more parking. So it's just an extension of that
Yeah.
district.
So that's on Bridge Street, heading out on the right-hand side before you get to the Drake line.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Almost across from the Hefners, but a little further.
Yes.
It's right
Yeah.
across the street.
Yep.
We had something on that a long time ago. A long time ago. Okay, I was just curious where it was. I thought that's what it was, but I figured I'd ask you, I have you, so. If no other further comments from the planning board, entertain a motion to adjourn?
Well, actually, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead, I'm sorry,
Chairman,
Howard.
I have a couple things I wanted to pass out here really quickly. I got a letter from Mass Development today regarding a business on Stedman Street, and it's addressing the planning board. I wanted to hand it out to you guys so you had a chance to look at it maybe for the next meeting, but it's a printing, DS Graphics Inc. on 120 Stedman that's has applied for development bond from Mass DEP, Mass Development. And the part of the process is Mass Development asked the planning board to find out if the project it conforms to the master plan. So I just wanted to hand out this to you right now, and
Okay.
maybe by the next meeting, you take a look at it and see if there's any issues with it. I took a look at it preliminarily, and it's in the light industrial zoning district, and it seems to conform with the master plan. But just wanted to give it to you for your information.
Will the applicant present any information as to how they feel it conforms to the master plan or not, or they're leaving that up to you?
Well, if there's more information that the board requires in making a determination on this, there's a number on there I can contact and get more information from Mass Development. But basically, what they lay out in the letters is they're looking for, from what I understand, a larger printing press that allows them to do a greater amount of business. So that bond is to help purchase that. There's going to be a creation, I think, they estimate something like 34 jobs due to the new printing press.
Mm.
Yeah, they just built that new plant up there, what, 3 years ago?
The board doesn't really have to formally provide a recommendation. It's just if there's any concerns that you see that.
Okay.
there's any-
So we can take this up the next meeting with, okay?
Yep.
So this is a project that's already built up there. I mean, so we're not seeing a new plan on it, this is just their request to us now, correct?
Yeah, exactly. The building's there. It's a fairly large printing company, but the only addition that will be made is on the interior. It's just going to be a new printing press. There's no site development or expansion of the building.
Is this something that the board members feel that we can digest now, or do you want to put it off the next meeting? I mean,
Well, I think that, they're asking to look at, the information that's in this letter in conjunction with the master plan and see if what they're planning to do for an expansion conforms with the policies are set forth in the master plan. So we may want to hold off and take a look at the next meeting.
If you like, I can put together a quick memo, just kind of bulleting any issues that
Address the master plan.
don't conform to the master plan or.
What do?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful,
I think-
whether it came from you or from the applicant to present why they feel it does conform to the master plan.
Sure. Just generally looking at it, I took a look at it about a half an hour before the meeting, and it seems to fit quite well, actually, with the master plan, but.
But that way, we basically have to have something in the file to say what we acted on, what the pros and cons were, if need be.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Anything else?
Yes,
Yeah?
and one other thing, I'm going to pass this down. This is, I think we got one each here. We've been working with, I should say, the planning department, especially those of us who work on boards, the Conservation Commission and Planning Board, with the building commissioner, and trying to find ways to kind of streamline the permitting process. One of those things that we've been struggling with, I shouldn't say struggle, but dealing with is following up on conditions that are placed on approvals, whether it's a special permit or site plan approval. It's something that just has to do with communication in-house with the different city departments. But the building commissioner has requested that some language be added to decision letters, informing applicants that they need to provide the decision letter in a list of conditions that are placed on an approval for every project anytime they're applying for a building permit. Basically putting the onus on the developer to provide that information to the building department. To get that information up front, because frequently what happens is the building commissioner will get an application for a building permit. He doesn't know exactly what's been approved by the planning board, then contacts me. I give him the information. It can be 2 or 3 days down the line. This way the information's up front.
No, it's a good idea.
Okay.
So, so this way, when it comes to inspectional services, the applicant has a copy of what's been approved by the board and all the conditions. So when inspectional services look at it, they know exactly what has to be met. So they look at the site and everything else before they can dig it up on their own, do the research, pull it all up the site, they know exactly what has to be done.
They put that in with their application for building permit, so he's got it right there.
And would the applicant would get that information from the minutes that was approved, a copy of it, or just the department? What would they get from you is probably my easiest question for you.
Well, typically, I actually provide a copy of the decision letter to an applicant.
Okay.
Whether or not it makes it from the applicant to the building permit
Right, okay.
application is kind of the question. The other way, they can get a certified copy of the decision letter from the clerk's office if they want, but,
So either way, it's not a hassle for them to get it.
it's very simple. Basically, all this language, all the building commissioner is looking for with this language is that it's known up front
What
for
they're
any
looking
kind of applicant that they need to provide this and with the complete
I mean,
application.
I think it's fair, because if they come in looking for a hearing, we give it with conditions. A lot of times when we do give out conditions, they stand in front of them and says, yeah, we'll do that. And then
And that's it.
they come down later,
Right.
sometimes they might not be, their memory might not be as good, or one of the conditions, oh yeah, we forgot about that, and this way, when they're looking for the vote, they're willing to do anything on the plan most of the time. And then after we approve it, sometimes things get a little vague from time going on. I don't mean intentionally sometimes, but as time lapses, they might forget one of those too. And I know that puts inspectional services in a tough position. Why should they do the research if these people have a copy of that letter in here? So that'd bring that with them, to them, they could review it, if they have any further questions there, then they could call you and follow up upon it, instead of making our staff do all the extra work, instead of having the applicant just submit it with this application.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and as you mentioned, the primary reason for this is to hopefully expedite the process a little bit, but
Sure.
also to kind of police some of these the projects as they move
And I
forward.
mean, I
'cause
think
some
when
of
the
them don't
people
always
have
end up
that letter, when they go to put their, go in for their permit, they have to look at it and say, oh yeah, these are the conditions we have to go along with.
Right.
And then, if they're gonna waive one or two of those, or they don't do it, then inspectional services, they're gonna send them right back here.
That's right.
And then we'll say, well, you agreed to this, we made the motion, what's changed? And then you get back to whether it's been, an oversight, or was it something that, we're gonna say, no, that's what we agreed.
Tight,
Okay.
it's tight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier for our staff to, not to have to go chase this down with the applicant and just give a copy. Any other board members have any questions on this? Do you wanna,
No, I think it's a good thing, yeah.
you need a vote on this, or just for informational purposes, or want an endorsement by us?
I don't necessarily need a vote, I just want to make sure you're aware of the language and are okay with it, if there's any changes.
I have no problem voting on it, and, just say the board incorporated this. I mean,
Great.
it sounds like most board members are in favor of this at this point. I'm not gonna speak for anybody else, but by the comments we've heard. Rich, do you wanna put that in form of a motion, or you feel
I'll
comfortable with
make a
that?
motion that we adopt the language proposed here in the decision, this decision letter language.
Any further discussion?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Genvin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, and we have one absent, so we have 4 in favor with 1 absent. Yeah, I think that clarifies, it makes it a lot easier,
That's a
you know?
good step forward.
I mean, it's just cutting down more paperwork. Any other comments for us to consider? Any other
That's
paperwork?
it, no.
No? Any other comments from board members again? No? Here and then? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Move, second it. All in favor, say aye. Chair
Aye.
votes yes. We are adjourned. Good night, everybody, and thank you very much.